Welcome to the Balanced Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Matt Southam. Here, we delve into candid conversations with entrepreneurs, exploring both their business journey and their secrets to maintaining mental well-being. As we navigate the balance of ambition and inner peace, I hope you find insights, inspiration, and invaluable takeaways in every episode. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Sunny. Welcome to the show today. I can clearly see you're sat in a photography studio. So I want to ask you about that, about your journey, because at some point you would have picked up a camera for the first time, and yet here you are now as a professional. What's that journey been like for you? Take me right back.
Hi, Matt. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it. Well, funny enough, my journey started in film. So I went to film school. I studied for 4 years. Worked in film production for a bit, set up my own business and as a freelancer, did a bit of work. I found I wasn't really getting anywhere with it. So I kind of pivoted into weddings. Okay. Basically, my brother got married and I watched his wedding video and it was terrible. And I basically had the idea, I kind of thought, well, with my training, maybe I can do better. So I had a soul-crushing corporate job at the time to kind of make ends meet while I was doing the production work, the low-paid production work. And I used that money to buy equipment for my first business, what turned out to be my first business. And I got a lucky break, and a family member was getting married, and I kind of said, "Can I film your wedding for pittance?" And they were like, "Yeah, of course you can."
Yeah.
And I hired a couple of freelancers to work with me, and the first wedding was a success, and the business kind of ballooned from there. And I remember I did my first trade show a few months after that, which was at the XL. I'd never done this. Was this was back in 2010, so I was in my late 20s, and I still remember doing that first trade show, absolutely terrified. All the other stands were beautiful. They were like laid out intricately, really beautiful production values. And there was me, and I had a couple of black cloths over the walls and my business logo stuck to the wall with tape. And the only thing I had at my stand was like a big TV. And by that point, I had a few weddings under my belt. And what I used to do for my clients is make trailers. Like film trailers, but for their weddings. Everyone does it now, but back then it was quite a new and novel kind of thing. So I had these trailers on a loop on this TV, and I was just kind of I thought this is a waste of time, this is a waste of money. No one's gonna come here, look at everyone else's stands. And within an hour of people coming in, the stand was just full of people. I had a huge crowd around the TV just watching all my trailers on a loop. People were just kind of mesmerized by it, and I was shocked. And I was looking around, and none of the other stands, like I'd basically taken business from the other stands, and everyone was just kind of looking at these trailers. And I remember I had a clipboard to kind of take people's details down, and I ran out of paper, and I had to kind of go to another stand, like borrow paper from them. It was amazing. It was incredible. It was a real eye-opening experience. And I managed to book myself out in the whole year just from that trade show. And I quit my day job the next day. I kind of said to myself, if I have this many bookings in the following year, I'm going to quit. And literally the next day I handed in my notice. And it was one of the best days of my life. So yeah, and then I continued that journey. The business went from strength to strength really quickly. It was kind of, we positioned ourselves at the premium end of the market. So it was a market within a market. So it was obviously the wedding industry, but we specialize in Asian weddings, in Indian weddings, which is a huge market. And we just kind of got the bookings in, and it just kind of word spread about our work and the quality of the work, and it just kind of went gangbusters from there, and ended up doing it for 7 years. We traveled the world doing destination weddings. We traveled all over every corner of the UK. We shot weddings, and it was an amazing journey. And it was my first business. I made a lot of mistakes and I learned from them, which is obviously very important in business. And yeah, and by the end of it, by the 7 years, I kind of, it's like any business or any job, like after a while you get kind of tired of it, but obviously doing something creative for a living, that's really amplified that feeling. And I felt like every wedding was kind of looking the same and kind of melding into each other, and I got a bit bored. And I kind of felt, and I was charging my clients quite a lot of money, and I kind of thought it's not fair to charge my client. I was obviously working hard for them, but like kind of almost going on autopilot at these weddings, and I kind of felt creatively bereft by the end of it. I kind of thought, what can I do next?
I guess just quickly on that, I guess it's a vicious circle, because they're often booking you based on the past work that they've seen. So they I like that style, I like the way you did that shot. So you sort of then have to do the same again, which then for you actually feels not as exciting.
Yeah, the first couple of years were incredible. It was a lot of fun. Like Indian weddings, I don't know if you've ever been to one, Matt.
I've been to one, yeah.
Yeah, they're
amazing.
Pretty nuts.
Yeah.
They're insane. They're like 3-day events.
Yep.
So much, they spend a lot of money on them.
Yeah. It was beyond anything I'd knew. It was when I realized, I mean, I went to 2 days of it, and I was like, sorry, 2 days, and then, just the length of the party the following day and the dancing, there was just so much going on. It was an eye-opener.
Yeah. And part of the reason it was the fact that I kind of lost my drive creatively, but also it's a very stressful job. And I was getting married. I got married in 2012, which was about 2 years after I established the business. And I remember just feeling really stressed and burned out like all the time. It was incredibly busy. I edited all my wedding videos, which was the equivalent of editing like, I had 3 people's raw footage to kind of put into and edit down to basically like a 2-hour wedding film. And it would take weeks to do. And it's a very stressful job because we positioned ourselves at the premium end of the market. And obviously when clients are paying top dollar, they expect the best. And obviously with weddings, you don't get a second take, right? If you miss something, tough. And I had to make sure my whole team were firing on all cylinders at every wedding that we did. I had to make sure I was firing on all cylinders. If you're sick, tough. Like just plow through and you have to just do it. And it was great for the first few years. And then I just found myself burning out. I still remember I went to the barber's. This was like a month before my wedding. And my barber was he was cutting the back of my hair. He's like, "Oh, what's that?" And he found a bald patch on the back of my head. And then more bald patches started appearing on my beard. I kind of thought, what's going on? So I went to the doctor and they said, yeah, you've got alopecia. And I was like, how does that happen? And they said, through stress. It's because you're stressed. And that was a really big, like, wake-up call to me to kind of balance my life a bit better and just stop being obsessed with... Because I think I was in my late 20s, so... I wanted to make loads of money and I wanted a nice car. I had a nice car and I wanted to go on holidays all the time. And, you know, like everyone in their late 20s.
And you feel invincible as well, don't you? Well, when you're in your 20s, you think, I can do this. I'll sleep when I'm old. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I still remember at the barber's when he put the mirror up to show me the bald patch in my head. And like my heart just sank and I was just like, oh my God, like this is affecting me physically. So yeah, that was a big wake up call for me. And then after that, I kind of, after I got married as well, and I decided to reduce the number of bookings I would take per year. And I think I made a good business decision in that I reduced the number of bookings that I took, but I increased my fees. So my turnover for the year was still pretty much the same, but I took less bookings. And I wish I'd kind of done that sooner, but it made a big difference to my life. But to be honest, even by the end, it was still quite full on and very stressful. And by that point, me and my wife decided we wanted to have kids. It's not really the kind of lifestyle you can have with children. But kind of alongside doing that business, I had a keen interest in photography as well. The kind of two disciplines kind of go hand in hand. And my wife was she worked in corporate. She's an accountant, but she was doing photography on the side as well. And it was one of the things we really bonded over when we first met. And she would do some shoots kind of on the side, almost like a hobby. And I would go and assist her on it, and I would help her out with lighting and things like that. And I found myself really enjoying it. And also I found at the weddings, I was looking at photographers quite enviously, because I kind of thought, I kind of want to be doing that now. I don't want to be doing this anymore. Partly it was because they had like a quarter of the equipment that we used to lug around.
Yeah.
That was part of it. So I kind of thought, okay, well, let's give this photography thing a go. So I did. So I converted my garage into a studio. And in 2018, I set up the Headshot Studio. And I thought, well, I thought with the wedding company, which was called Perfect Frame Productions, I thought, well, that took off really quickly. I'm sure this will too. But that wasn't the case, because the thing with the wedding industry is whether you're shooting any kind of wedding, but particularly Indian weddings, it's very kind of insular. Like everyone kind of knows each other. And after 6 months to a year of shooting these weddings, all your bookings are, not all, but I'd say about 90% of your bookings are through referrals and recommendations. So it's quite easy to get work. Whereas the photography industry is completely different, unless you're obviously working weddings. But like the portrait photography industry sector is very different to that. You have to kind of really work hard at marketing, at branding. And I kind of think I went in quite naive at the beginning. So when I first started, it was very quiet. It was a tough first year, as is with most businesses.
Yeah.
I wasn't used to that, because with my first business, I went full in right at the beginning, and it wasn't any issue. But with this, it was tough going for the first year or so. Partly because I was still finding my voice in my photography and my style. I remember I used to have curtain rails up on the wall with a bar, and I used to have almost like a duvet cover on hanging over it as the background. I still actually. My marketing strategy was basically Google, and it still is, to be honest, to this day. It's worked out pretty well for me. And slowly the clients started building up, but it still wasn't anything like I was doing before. And I started regretting leaving the wedding industry. I was like, I've killed a cash cow, basically.
Yeah.
And then in 2019, at the start of 2019, I hired a business mentor, and he kind of really kind of helped me turn things around. And he basically taught me to niche down to headshots, because I was doing all sorts of stuff back then. Niche down to headshots, and he's like, branding is everything. If you have your branding down, always go for the high-end market, which is what I did with the weddings. But he was like, go for the high-end market, because I was freaking out over my competition, other local photographers and things like that. And he's like, don't look at anyone else. Just focus on what you're doing and build up your brand. And, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
So I kind of took that on board. And the other thing, I can't recommend having a business mentor enough. If you're watching this and you just started your business, or your business is struggling, I can't recommend bringing on a business mentor, because as you know, Matt, and as people watching this will know, like if you run a business, it's a lonely path.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to ask for help. And I kind of felt like I needed it. So I reached out to my business mentor, and he gave me lots of structure, and he had workbooks for me, and kind of visualizing where you want to be, and targets and things like that. Things that I didn't really have with my first business, because I didn't really need them, because business was just flowing.
It just,
to me
organically.
quite easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did all that. He helped me completely redo my website, and my branding was really strong. And he also kind of told me to focus on LinkedIn. Now, obviously, social media is really important for photographers, all people in creative industries. I hate social media. I'm not a big fan of it.
You know what? I'm sort of in the same boat. I mean, I use social media a lot, but it's sort of that vicious thing of actually, if it completely disappeared, I suppose I'd miss some of the connections, but there is, you'd feel that sort of sense of relief gone, that, oh, the pressure's off, because it's there and we have to use it. And sometimes when you have to do something, you become a little bit pained to do it, you know, because it's not so much a choice, you know, we're having to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I felt like I wasn't getting much traction on there either, which is, yeah, it wasn't good for my mental health, I think, because I was doing everything I was told on social media, but I wasn't getting any traction. And then on LinkedIn I find is very different to kind of Instagram and Facebook and things like that, because LinkedIn, you can get somewhere just organically. Whereas the other kind of social media companies, you have to kind of pay a little bit in order to kind of get some traction, unless you already have a big following. Yeah. But with LinkedIn, it's all very organic. So my business mentor taught me to build up my connections, and I did, and to post consistently, to kind of post every single day. So I would just post photos of my clients on there, have a little bit of a backstory to them, and it really worked. And I built up my connections on there, and now I get lots of business just from LinkedIn, from not spending a penny on there, literally just having a presence on there and posting regularly. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, with LinkedIn, it certainly is a different social network than all of the others. I mean, I suppose the first obvious point is it is still a professional social network. You know, it's generally where you go there purely to promote yourself and your business. And I think we are seeing more personal posts coming onto LinkedIn. There's some vulnerability being shown, and I think that's really good. It's a real positive. But I think it is different from the other social networks. I mean, I certainly, you know, my Facebook is, you know, why you to post photos of, you know, animals and kids, you know, but LinkedIn's a little bit more focused on what I do to actually sort of generate income. So it is a different network. And I think for someone like you, obviously that's clearly working. It was interesting what you were saying about a mentor and getting someone to support you, because I had this exact conversation yesterday. For some reason, there seems to be, when you're running a business, it's not your immediate fault. Yet any other competitive market, and I often use sport as a comparison, you know, if you want to be the world's best footballer, you have a football coach. And in fact, you probably have a dietitian and things like that. If you want to be a good tennis player, you have a tennis coach. You know, if you want to be good at business, you should have a business coach or a business mentor or someone who can support you, because business can be very lonely. Who do you talk about it to? Because quite often the stresses and the strains, you don't necessarily want to take them home and speak to your partner, and you know, so you still want to present, no, this is working out, I'm doing okay. So who do you talk to?
I think men especially find it hard in all walks of life. Like, even just going to B&Q and you can't find what you need, it's really hard to ask for help. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with business. But I do highly recommend it. And it did kind of help me turn my business around. And by the time 2019 rolled around, my second child was born at the beginning of the year, and the business really started to kind of pick up and started to do well. And I'd started advertising on Google Ads, and it really started kind of paying off for me. And the business was going from strength to strength. And then 2020 rolled around, and then, I don't know, something happened in 2020 that kind of, changed everything. So obviously I had to kind of close down and furlough during the first lockdown, which was kind of heartbreaking, to be honest, because I was just getting to the point where the business was really starting to kind of pick up momentum. And obviously, like, you know, like, business is all about momentum, right?
Yeah.
And then as soon as you're on a high, and then it was literally kind of the next day I had to kind of call in and kind of cancel all my shoots and all my bookings and everything. And it wasn't a great time. But on the plus side, I did get to spend a lot of time with my children, and it made me kind of appreciate that time with them. And my wife, she had a corporate job and she was working from home anyway. So she was working for this tech startup at the time. So she was working crazy hours. So I was basically looking after our two little girls. And it was at first it was quite demoralizing having to kind of close the business down and everything. But then it was really amazing spending all that time with my children. And my wife kind of said to me, whenever I was down, she would always say to me, when are you ever going to get this opportunity to spend this much time with the girls again? And I was like, you're absolutely right. So I really made the most of it and kind of really hung out with them. And then after a couple of months, or I think it was a couple of months, the first lockdown, was it a month? I can't remember.
It was certainly and it was very sunny those first couple of months as well. I remember that the weather was lovely.
It was amazing. I got a paddle out and we were having a blast. Yep. We had a great time. Yep. And then after the first lockdown finished, I reopened the studio. I had no idea how it was going to go. I didn't think I was going to do any business at all because I thought people would be still a bit too afraid to kind of go back out. But it was actually the complete opposite. I found people just kind of, obviously people had been cooped up, so everyone was kind of ready to kind of get back out there, and the business just exploded after I reopened after lockdown. And I was just inundated, and it ended up being 2020 and 2021 ended up being two of my best years kind of ever. I think it was 2020. Was it 2020 or 2021? I ended up doing my first six-figure revenue, which was a real benchmark for me, and I felt really proud of myself of that, and it was fantastic. And then so 2020 we reopened, did really well the rest of the year, and then we had lockdown 2.
Yep.
Which was probably even worse than the first time I had to close down, because again, I've been doing amazing numbers, like amazing business, and then crashed back down again.
Yeah.
And that I remember that lockdown was a lot harder than the first one, because obviously it was the middle of winter, the middle of a pandemic. You have two small children. What are you supposed to do with them in the middle of winter, right? So what do you do? So we managed to get through that. And then the same thing happened again in the April when I reopened. Again, just absolutely crazy. Loads of inquiries, loads of bookings coming in. And I found that people's attitude towards their jobs and their lives had changed a lot kind of post-pandemic. Maybe it was because people had a lot more free time on their hands, and people were evaluating their lives and evaluating their careers. I think a lot of people thought they wanted to improve their quality of life, right? So I found a lot of people were coming to me because they were going for a new job or going for a promotion. They wanted to change their LinkedIn profiles. I found loads of people, interestingly, were starting their own businesses, were kind of quitting their day jobs and kind of starting their own businesses. So they needed headshots for their LinkedIn and their website and all their business profiles and PR and things like that. So so business was really good then, and it's been going at a steady pace kind of since then. That's pretty much it. And then 2 years ago, I moved into the studio that I'm in now, which was always my dream, because doing it out of my garage was great. I had no overheads, obviously, so right. I was doing crazy profits, but the plan was always to kind of move out of there. It was always kind of embarrassing because a lot of my clients are kind of quite high flyers. So I would always I get a lot of CEOs and entrepreneurs coming to me, and it's always a bit embarrassing having them come to my back gate at my door and like taking them through my garden with all of my kids' toys lying around, and then having them in my garage. There's always a little bit embarrassing kind of doing that. So the plan was always to move into a bigger space, and then we found this one and we thought it was absolutely perfect, and we kind of moved in, and it was a bit of a shock at first because, like I said, I had no overheads before, and then I had to start paying rent and utility bills and things like that. But like after a while, you just kind of get used to that, and you kind of incorporate it into your numbers and everything, and then it's not a problem anymore.
Do you find it helps you separate that sort of work and home?
Yeah, absolutely. There were a few times when my daughters would come in kind of during a shoot, and my wife wouldn't be able to hold them back or whatever, or she'd lose track of them, and one of them would just kind of walk in, and Yeah, I did find I was kind of working longer hours because I would spend time in my garage kind of editing photos where I should have been spending time with my family. And I don't really do that now. So I'm quite strict with, unless I've got a late shoot or something like that,
Yeah.
I won't work too late. I want to spend time with the girls. Most of the time I like to get home in time to pick them up for school, which I usually do with my wife. We've agreed it's quite important for us to do things like that because when I was growing up, my parents, so I'm a first generation British Asian. My parents come over from the 60s. They both ran businesses together. So I think that's kind of where I got the bug from.
Yeah.
And they first ran a laundrette and then a paper shop. And then in the 90s, they had a fish and chip shop. And these are very kind of demanding businesses to run. And they were always working. And me and my brother kind of became a little bit kind of self-sufficient, which is kind of good, actually. We learned a lot of, I'm a great cook, for example. But I kind of don't want my girls to have an absent father. Like, I want to be there for them. So work-life balance is so important to me now. It's not something I ever considered, like when I was younger and I was doing the wedding business. I never considered anything like that. I was just working all the time. But now I know the importance of work-life balance, and I make sure that I'm there for my children whenever I can be and as much as I can be. It's a very important part of life, and I think people can get kind of absorbed into their work, and well, which is understandable.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all do to a certain extent. For those of us who run our own business, it's quite often in a sector that, you know, we've got a love for, we've got some passion for, and then therefore, you know, while it's still work, and at times it really does feel like work, actually at times we're really enjoying it, and you want to, you know, push yourself forward, you want to commit to reaching whatever that next goal is. But yeah, you've got to at times go, actually, work is just one part of my life. And while an important part, there are other parts that are equally, if not more important, your family, your children, etc.
Absolutely.
And being able to you know, spend time with them is essential.
Well,
What do you do just for you? Because I've got two young daughters, and you know, I love spending time with them. But I do have that thing where I'm like, I still need to be me at times, and sometimes it's, you know, and I go to the gym by myself, and that's often my own time. But is there anything you do sort of just to keep you ticking over and being you, your own time?
I should go to the gym. I don't. I used to, but I don't. I'm too lazy for that now. But I've always been a film buff, and I'll remain a film buff. So, like, movies are my bag. Like, I watch movies all the time. I've got a huge kind of Blu-ray collection. And so, yeah, whenever I can, I just kind of, I watch film as much as I can. I love independent film and finding little treasures and films that are quite obscure. And I love that, basically. Me and my wife have decided this year we're going to be a bit more active together. So we're going to play tennis. I used to do a lot of sports when I was younger, but as I got older, and especially after kids, like, I don't have the time for it. But
no, kids definitely take a massive demand on your time. You know, I never realized how much maybe spare time I used to have prior to kids. You know, I sort of think, what did I do with my what did I do with all my time? But maybe it just worked, I don't know. Like you say, it enabled, you know, there's different levels, different stages of our life, and actually we need to adapt ourselves just for our mindset, for our body, based on just the circumstances. And you know, but we are incredibly resilient. It was interesting what you were saying about, you know, first generation over here, and obviously your parents were working. Do you think you got a little bit of that entrepreneurial spirit from your parents, seeing them working so hard, having come over here in the 60s and then really, you know, work to I suppose, you know, give you the lifestyle and give you the opportunities that you could have in life? You know, you must have looked up at them for that.
I think a lot of people that I know that are first generation British Asians, we look up to our parents a lot because they obviously came over with nothing, and they kind of built themselves up, and like my dad always said, he came over with kind of £10 in his pocket in the 1960s, and he's done really well for himself, and we have we feel like when we grow up we have a responsibility to help them as well. So me and my brother were helping our parents a lot in their businesses, kind of on weekends, and we'd help them close up and clean up and serve food and things like that. So we would help them quite a lot with it. And I think I did catch that entrepreneurial bug from them, which is weird because my brother didn't. He's gone the kind of corporate route. So yeah, go figure. I'm not sure if it's nature versus nurture, but I did catch it. And I did work in corporate for a bit after I finished university, and I hated it. I always knew I wanted to go into business for myself. It was just a case of what I would do. But yeah, I think a lot of people who come from an Asian background, and we've seen our parents kind of work themselves to the bone. And that's the other thing is like I was saying before, like we feel like we have these days, we kind of feel like we have to have that work-life balance, which I think our parents back in the day were all about, we have to make money and we have to support the kids. We want to give them the best possible start they can. And I think maybe it was a little bit blinkered in that they were just kind of working flat out. But I can't deny that the life that they've given me through their hard work and through their sacrifice, I guess, as well. I think my parents used to have 3 or 4 days off in a year. That was pretty much it. But yeah, so I think we appreciate the hard work and graft that goes into business, and I think that's really kind of sunk into my psyche. And obviously, business is all about hard work and dedication. So yeah, but it's also about finding that balance.
Yeah. Find that balance. There's definitely got to be some hard work, dedication, like you said, and also consistency as well.
Yeah.
You know, you were speaking about the high-end weddings you were filming, and can very much see, you know, you were clearly really passionate about delivering that fantastic high-quality service every time. Yeah, it didn't matter how anyone felt. The team had to be going for it, and that's obviously carried on into what you do now. You know, the quality of the shots that you take for people's, a lot of people use them for their LinkedIn and going for jobs. And I can see that's all branding. And you spoke about how have a high quality brand, you know, you were advised with that with your mentor. Do you see sort of branding to be particularly important now that actually we are all so connected, and it's trying to position yourself in the right space? Do you see branding as part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because LinkedIn never used to be a big deal. I reckon. I remember it was kind of the butt of the jokes, wasn't it? It was the lesser social media platform.
Yeah.
And I think when Microsoft bought it out, I remember thinking at the time, it's like, well, waste of money. I think they spent a few billion on it. But credit to them, like LinkedIn is huge now, and everyone uses it. And if you go for a job interview or whatever, like people are going to check you out on there. So I think your own personal brand is an incredibly important thing nowadays. If you work in corporate or if you own your own business, it doesn't matter. Like your brand is incredibly important, and people are going to judge your work and your abilities kind of based on that. And even if with having like a professional headshot done on kind of LinkedIn, having that as your profile photo, just the act of the fact that you went through the trouble of booking a professional photographer, going to the studio, having your photo done, that in itself shows potential kind of employers that this person's willing to go that extra mile to kind of portray themselves in the best possible light that they can.
Yeah.
That's just as important as having that professional photo. Just showing people that you have that impetus to kind of just do that and think about that, I think is incredibly important as well.
Yes, doing those things that I suppose aren't essential, but actually by doing them, you're showing that I'm taking this seriously. And there's that saying, I can't remember who said it, saying along the lines of, how you do anything is how you do everything. And if you're taking shortcuts in other ways, actually that's probably going to creep in across the rest of your life. Actually, if you're like, no, my photo is going to be of high quality, professionally done, that's the standard I'm setting for myself.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
If you're going for a job, you're positioning yourself you're already giving that impression of, I'm a professional. I do things properly and I take it seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think along those lines, the advent of AI is an interesting thing, because I think the whole kind of headshot industry is going to be kind of flipped on its head, because AI is going to take over. I think it's not a question of if, I think it's a question of when. And you are getting apps now that you can take selfies and it will convert them into headshots. Interestingly, I've had a few clients over the last kind of few months, last 6 months or so, who said they've actually used the app, but they didn't like the results. They said it looked kind of too fake. So they actually came to me and they booked their session in. And I was really impressed by that, because I know a lot of people, probably myself included, if in a different dimension, I probably would have said, yeah, that's good enough, that's fine, I'll just put it on there. But I was impressed. Like, these people saw these photos, and the results are okay. They're not completely lifelike, but they're okay. No. I was impressed that these people kind of saw these and kind of thought, no, I want to portray the real me, So they actually made the effort to get in touch with me, come down to the studio. Because you have to remember, a lot of my clients, they don't want to be doing this. That a lot of them are very anxious when they come to my studio. They're completely out their comfort zone, which is totally understandable. And yeah, I'm always impressed with my clients kind of forcing themselves to come to my studio and have these headshots done, because they know how important it is. Yeah. And I tip my hat off to them. I really do, because you can see some of them are like visibly shaking when they come into the studio. Some of them have said to me that they haven't got a good night's sleep beforehand because they're so worried about it. So I make a point to always sit down with my clients when they first come to the studio. First 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes, I just sit down with a tea or coffee and just have a chat with them, talk about them. People love talking about themselves. And I always, and the best part, and that's actually the best part of my job, is kind of meeting so many different people from so many different walks of life. I think I've met a person from pretty much every continent on Earth, barring Antarctica. Just kind of sitting down, having a conversation with them, just kind of easing them into the whole setup, explaining what's going to happen, and then you can see their anxiety just kind of drift away while we continue the chatting while I'm taking the photos. It's not kind of silent. I have music on in the background, and I just kind of talk to them while we're shooting, and it really kind of puts them at ease. And I think that makes a big difference to how they kind of come across in their headshots, and then ultimately how they come across on platforms like LinkedIn and on their websites and things like that. So
yeah, it's amazing how the pressure that we put upon ourselves for anything. So, I mean, I was a full-time DJ back in the day, and I always used to joke, I used to joke that, I could mix perfectly until I pressed record. And there was something about, I could mix live after a few beers, in a studio when you were recording, you'd just go and you'd go under pressure. And I've seen it actually on a video shoot. We were doing some testimonial videos, and it actually finished, said, okay, yeah, but we're all done. How did you feel? Was there anything else you would have liked to have mentioned? And the person then just went, oh, well, I suppose I could have. And then just did this brilliant, perfect speech, because they thought the camera had stopped rolling. Right. It's amazing how, just getting people to relax is actually as much of a skill probably that you've developed as taking the photo. You've got your technical ability, but it's that personal connection.
Absolutely. It's actually essential to my job, I think. And if I couldn't do that, then the photos will look terrible. I do find, interestingly enough, that there are certain nationalities that are more confident coming here than others. So I've got like a tier system of how kind of the anxiety levels of my clients. Like at the top, the least anxiety, you've got like the Americans, South Africans, and Australians. I find that those three nationalities are the most confident. And then kind of the most anxiety is probably like Brits. I'd say kind of Europeans are kind of in the middle. And then Brits, I find, have most kind of anxiety kind of come into these sessions. I think that's kind of a cultural thing, a societal thing. But I find that very interesting.
Yeah, there definitely is that thing. I mean, we do see Americans as big, bold, brash, full of it. And the British are known as being very polite. And, we wouldn't ever comment on anything. And therefore, we're quite nervous in ourselves because we don't like putting ourselves out there in that same way. Yeah, it is funny how, and you see that when it purely comes down to having a photo taken.
Yeah, and even with people who come in and they exude that kind of confidence coming into the studio, and they just have that kind of real confident air about them. As soon as they kind of step in front of the lights and the camera, they just kind of, they don't go to pieces, but like you can see like that confidence really kind of drops. And it's my job to kind of get that back up there and almost to kind of distract them with the conversation during the shoot. So just kind of putting people at ease is probably the most important part of the job, I think. Because if I didn't, that kind of awkwardness and anxiety would really kind of come through in the headshots. Which is not obviously what you want to convey on LinkedIn. You want to look confident.
I've seen some images. I mean, that was recently. I can't remember what the exact one was, but it was a section of photos. Sort of a before and after the photographer had told someone they were beautiful or whatever the comment was. Yeah. And people physically do look different. And I saw one a while ago, which I think it was the photographer was told a different backstory to the person. One was told, this person is, an ex sort of gangster, did armed robberies, is hard as nails and things like that. Take their photo. And then someone else was said, oh, he's a, whatever, the local church vicar or whatever. And just the way they were positioned and spoken to, you could see the person who was meant to be the hard man did look harder, and it was a soft, and then the other side was a softer photo. And that purely was just, I guess, that, bedside manner, as you might call it, of bringing someone in, treating them, sitting down, the conversation, and how people relax and therefore relax their faces. And just, it's amazing how that comes across so well in an image.
Yeah, it's quite subtle. With kind of eye contact, because there's a fine line between kind of getting a really good connection with a client and having the kind of dead eye kind of effects. You get that a lot with kind of celebrities and when people on the red carpet and stuff, and the paparazzi are taking photos of them. And if you kind of look at the photos of these people, like even though they're smiling and they look happy, but if you look at their eyes, they're usually kind of dead inside kind of thing. So obviously we want to do the exact opposite of that. So I actually encourage my clients, don't force yourself to smile. Well, we're not doing school photos. You don't need to have a cheesy grin that you feel like you have to kind of put on or anything like that. I tell my clients it's all in the eyes. It's kind of let your eyes do all the hard work. And I kind of tell them, kind of go to your happy place, kind of think of memories that make you smile. Most people, it's walking their dogs, funnily enough, because I usually ask my clients what are you thinking about, like during the session, and they usually say walking their dogs, which I find really interesting and quite funny. Even when they have children, they don't say, I was thinking about my son, I was like, walking my dog. Just like
Oh, that's brilliant. I've absolutely loved our conversation today. I want to finish off just with one final question of, if you heard about someone starting out in business, maybe they've been in a corporate job, or maybe they've left college or university, they're looking to start, what would be your number one tip to someone? What would you say to them?
I would say, don't suffer alone. If you can set up a business with a business partner, do it. If you can't, bring in a business mentor. because they're worth their weight in gold. They really are. And yeah, that's basically my top 2 tips. And manage cash flow. That's incredibly important.
Thank you once again for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish you all the best for your future, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Matt. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Balanced Ambition podcast. I genuinely hope the stories inspire you as much as they inspire me. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with a friend. And remember, by subscribing, you won't miss an episode, and it would truly mean the world to me. Stay balanced, and I'll see you next time.